All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive, tactical breakdown of Scene 27 from the Apocalypse Beckons campaign log. We're zeroing in on a highly volatile, frankly chaotic encounter known as the Northern Ambush. We're going to examine the high-stakes combat, the split-second decisions, and those sudden twists that literally altered the entire trajectory of the team. So, here's the ultimate question, right? What happens when a moment of fragile, hard-won peace is abruptly shattered by a 9-foot-tall nightmare? The Fellowship actually found themselves in exactly this scenario, right after barely escaping all that fire and brimstone down south. Let's analyze how this seasoned, veteran team reacted when the frozen streets suddenly, out of nowhere, ran red.
Now, to really set the stage, we've got to look at the incredible pivot the party made just before this ambush. Escaping the smoldering ruins of Ashwillow, yeah, that required some heavy sacrifices. They literally traded away a volatile hand cannon, that mysterious unopened black box from the Zephyr's vaults, a blue coin of treasure finding, and a bookie's ledger. And in exchange, they secured vital winter gear, a heavy rune-etched belt of fire giant strength from a secret pirate auction, and a portal jump straight to the frozen reaches of the north. I mean, they really thought they were buying a moment to just breathe. Boy, were they wrong.
But right before the chaos hits, there is a super crucial lore beat we cannot ignore. Hal, the Aasimar bard who's been chronicling their journey for months, decides he has finally seen enough of the heroic life. He officially parts ways with the team to return to his familiar haunts, humming a mournful dirge as he walks away. But, and this is critical, he takes his magical earring of foretelling with him, tucked safely in his pocket. Now remember, Atemenus' dark patron had specifically demanded the Warlock steal that very earring, so Hal leaving with it safely secured? That is a massive dangling narrative thread for us to keep our eyes on.
Okay, let's dive into this threat. The team is just resting up in the tavern when suddenly screams erupt from the street. They rush outside to find townsfolk being absolutely slaughtered. And get this, the townsfolk are already bizarrely dazed, some even have wax stuffed in their ears to block the eerie northern winds. These attackers, pure, unadulterated brutality. We're talking over 9 feet tall, immensely over-muscled, gray-skinned monstrosities, just tearing into the defenseless with massive, rending teeth, almost like vicious hounds.
Now, the Fellowship's reaction here is instantaneous. Zero hesitation whatsoever. The timeline is incredibly tight. Like watching a perfectly executed sports play. Aaron, the human ranger, is the very first one out the door, his eyes immediately locking onto the targets. Almost simultaneously, Welsies, the dwarven paladin of vengeance, charges straight into the fray, while Percy Jin, the human monk, utilizes his insane 50-foot walking speed to just blur into motion and close the distance. It's a textbook example of a veteran team shifting from total rest to lethal response in the blink of an eye.
This opening counteroffensive is honestly a masterclass in applying immediate, overwhelming pressure. Aaron draws his magical oath bow, verbally marking the first beast as his hated foe, and just sinks his arrows deep through the frigid air. Meanwhile, Welsis summons a spectral warhorse, charging in with terrifying momentum. He slams into the second beast with his great axe, affectionately named C-3PO by the way, and unleashes a crushing, glowing divine smite. It's exactly what you want. Precision range damage paired perfectly with devastating close-quarters shock tactics.
And this brilliantly illustrates how martial arts can completely flip a tactical dynamic. The first beast retaliates by clamping its massive jaws right onto Percy Jin. Most characters, they'd be crippled by a bite like that. Instead, Percy channels his ki to entirely negate the agony, catching the damage and reflecting the physical force of the bite right back onto the creature with double the intensity. I mean, wow, he literally turns the monster's own offensive power into a lethal trap.
The momentum just keeps building as Dean Scotch enters the fray. As a Goliath fighter, Dean uses his imposing physical stature to absolute perfection. He crashes into the second beast with a flurry of heavy greatsword strikes. Then, pushing his physical limits through his action surge mechanic, he resets his momentum and unleashes a second massive flurry. It's an unbroken, 6-strike sequence of pure aggression that just carves right through the monster's flank for critical damage. Just devastating.
So that brings us to the turning point of the skirmish. Percy follows up his ki reflection with 4 rapid, unarmed strikes, literally knocking this 9-foot beast clean off its feet. Artemius, the half-elf warlock, is supporting from range, lancing the second beast with a triple volley of concussive eldritch blasts. But then, the whole environment shifts. A mysterious, high-pitched whistle, audible only to the team, cuts through the wind. Instantly, the beasts break contact and attempt to flee into the shadows. Debbie, the party's elf wizard and resident baker, immediately reacts by casting a flurry of magical snowballs to slow down their retreat.
But Percy Jin, he refuses to let this slaughter go unpunished. As the first beast scrambles away, Percy utilizes his specialized ranged weapon, a Kyokusutsu Shoge, which is essentially a vicious rope dagger. With cold, calculated precision, he hurls the blade into the darkness, catching the retreating monster dead in its tracks and ending its rampage permanently.
Now, right as the adrenaline of this frankly flawless victory begins to ebb, a terrifying twist drops on the party. Artemis, the Warlock whose magic has saved them time and time again, he suddenly falls to his knees, clutching his head. He looks up at his friends, his voice thick with absolute dread, and whispers, "I think my patron is dead. All my powers are fading."
The physical fallout of a warlock losing their magic like this is immediate, and it is eerie. As Astinus gasps for breath, dark, wispy smoke rises from his body, violently whisked away by the freezing northern gale. The purple stigmata of the apocalypse prophecy on his skin begin to throb with this brilliant, agonizing light. A faint, sickly pink aura surrounds him, right before his body gives out entirely, leaving the party to desperately drag him back into the tavern. The contrast here is just staggering, right? A perfectly executed tactical victory, immediately followed by this dark, crippling consequence.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question. The team is marching through the frozen north toward Chronopolis to face Gormak's fearsome general, known as the Voice. But how can they possibly face an enemy named the Voice when their own warlock has just been brutally magically silenced? What happens to a team's tactical synergy when their heavy arcane artillery is suddenly gone? That cliffhanger is exactly where this scene ends, leaving us desperate to analyze their next move. Thank you so much for exploring this tactical breakdown with me today. Keep your strategy sharp, and we'll see you in the next explainer.